Jane?
I did.
She did.
Okay.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, that's hysterical. And so we'll have to start fresh and say, hello to everybody who might be tuning in, and hello to all the future viewers. And, Greg and I are kind of smiling and laughing right now because we've been talking for like the last 10 minutes, not realizing that we weren't live. So we're going to kind of rehash our conversation and go over some things. But so, hello, Mr. Hildebrandt. How are you,
Nice to
sir?
see you, Keith.
See you. And why don't you give us that quote of the day was excellent.
Okay.
Why don't we recap?
We'll start it again. Okay. Here's the quote given the subject of the talk tonight. The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. F. Scott Fitzgerald.
That is a fantastic quote. It's a fantastic quote. And so, moving into this conversation of, highbrow art and lowbrow art, good, bad, fine art versus commercial art, kitsch versus, whatever.
Unkitsch.
Unkitsch, we find ourselves in a world that really identifies, they find the need to categorize and identify things and
yes.
and rank and profile things.
It's all got to be binary. There's only two ways to look at something.
Yes.
Good or bad.
It's good or bad.
Good or bad.
So we're, while this goes through everything, film and books and
politics,
music and everything.
Religion.
In the world of art and in terms of art, I wanted to ask you a question. When did you become aware in your life or in your career that people make that distinction of art, fine art versus commercial art or highbrow art versus lowbrow art? When did you become aware of that distinction? And when did you become aware that the work you were doing might not be considered high art?
That's probably early to mid 60s when I came from Detroit to make films for Bishop Fulton J. Sheen. And I'd moved into this two-family house where this artist was also living here in Jersey. Bob D'Amelio was his name. He was 10 years older than me and a great artist, fantastic. And the art director at an ad agency. He's the one that got me to become aware of that distinction, that there was indeed this world of fine art, gallery art, more on the level, though his distinction was, you're not doing it as an illustration for someone else's project, whatever that may be, advertising, illustration for magazine, book, film, name it, but you were expressing yourself personally. That was the distinction that I really got clearly, even though I'd been, expressing myself in my own work in a way over the years, but I never really thought about the two distinct, the commercial and fine art. Just to go back a little bit, what you just said though earlier, when you said lowbrow and highbrow, that's an old term. I think we all use it. I mean, it actually comes from the 19th century pseudoscience of phrenology, which the Nazis, phrenology, PH, phrenology, okay, that the Nazis then developed into their racial theory. Highbrow meaning if you've got a high forehead, like me, you're intelligent. If you've got a low brow, if your hairline starts here, you're stupid. But that's about, to me, what I think the stupidity of this freaking categorization. This is good, this is bad, this is great, this is high art, this is low art, this is kitsch, bad taste, this is good. Yeah. Who the goddamn hell decrees what good taste is? You like what you like. And you don't like what you don't like.
So for the sake of clarity here, or to push back on that, is there nothing at all to make those distinctions? We say it's
Oh, what do you mean?
it's all a matter of taste, and you like what you like, but is there nothing to distinguish quality over not so quality?
Yeah, of course there is. I mean, it's like but specific. Look, there's the acceptance of a high art, right, in the world. Say, and I yep. Look at this, and I'm going to keep leaning down because I got books and all kinds of stuff here. Why is this Picasso painting high art, right? It's in whatever museum it's in. It's museum worthy. It's decreed as a genius, a fantastic artist of this century, of the last century, blah, 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 blah. And why is this low art? I mean, compare the two.
Yep.
I mean, what makes one high, one low? Is it subject? Is it subject? Is it treatment or technique? Well, that's a personal thing. That's up to somebody making a decree that one style or technique is better than the other, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
or is it simply the name?
The what?
Is
the
it
subject.
Simply the name?
You mean the name of the artist or the name of the subject?
The name of the artist.
Yeah. Well, that again is something that gets established and everybody buys into it and accepts it, and that's all due to promotion and publicity too. A lot of it, right? How many other artists were functioning at the time of this Picasso? Magnificent, fantastic illustrators in this country or any country that are completely unknown.
Yeah.
That would be decreed as less than him. You see? The old thumbs up, thumbs down of the Roman emperors.
And
right?
There's an element, there's the element that we were talking about before of the art of the bullshit.
Yeah. I'm going to keep leaning.
Convince someone of.
Yeah, the art of the bullshit. And I said that, there is that con job, the snake oil salesman aspect, And like I say, in the early 50s, or late 40s, early 50s, I remember a TV show called Racket Squad. And there was Reed Hadley played Captain Braddock. He had it behind his desk. And at the end of the show, after they give you this con job reenactment, he would say, remember, there's always somebody willing to slap you on the back with one hand and pick your pocket with the other. And that's kind of like, a lot of art is, everything is politics, religion, so much of it is that, isn't it?
Yes. And there's the who you're marketing things to. And, there's that element, I think, that if something is popular with the masses, it's less than.
There you go. So you're right. That's the big one, I think. If it appeals to a very small, that's the pitch. That's the appeal. That at least that was all through the 50s. You know what I mean? You pitch this stuff at the few. Only you elitist few who are brilliant and bright, and only you can understand this. Those people over there, they like Norman Rockwell or some representational artist. But that's the masses. They're stupid,
Now,
why do people buy that?
They want to feel special.
Well,
you want to feel special.
Yeah, I'm better than you.
But you want to feel like you're in the know. Like,
in the know.
That you're not like, okay, I respect and admire these people. Why? Because perhaps they have money. They have a lot of money. Or because they're in a suit and that thing is in a very nice frame on the wall. And they're talking about it in hushed tones.
Right.
And I don't want to feel like I'm stupid and that I don't get it. So therefore, I buy in and say, well, it's art.
The thing is, I remember, it's art. This is art. Oh, look at it, because the museum and they have decreed that this is art. The time that I was with my friend Bob DeMille, the artist, And he said, let's go. We would go into the city to go to the museums all the time. And we went to the modern, I think it was the Museum of Modern Art. And he said, watch, because I'd never been there. And he knew New York. He was a New Jersey guy, born in Newark, raised in Newark. Fantastic guy. He was in the Marines in World War II. He was a Golden Gloves boxer. He was a street fighting guy, tough, but brilliantly, his mind was incredible. You know, he was artistic, fantastic artist. But we went into the city, and we're standing in the Museum of Modern Art with this big picture. I think it was called Black on Black. It was a big black canvas. And he said, watch the people come into the room and get silent and whisper with each other, like, you know what I mean? And it was like, and we start to laugh, and you know, the guards would come with the red jackets and kind of like look at you. You know, it's like there's a sucker born every minute. I mean, kind of like thing. That's what that sort. You know, the other time too is, and you know, I know this is going to cause a lot of crap with people right now. I don't really give a shit. You know, I'm too old for this. You know, I don't give a damn. I'm 82. What the hell do I care? We went to the Museum of Modern Art with Jean, her brother, and his partner, and because there was going to be a show of somebody had just left their impressionist collection to the Museum of Modern Art, and that's what I wanted to go see, because so-called impressionists. I loved all those guys, you know, that whole era, and we walked and we looked at it, and it was fine. It was kind of like the not really the greatest stuff that they did, you know, sort of like the stuff that you know, just you're trying something out. And then we said, let's go to Gene said, let's go to the museum. So I've never been there, and I'm starting to walk through, and there's this great big thing with a little dot on the corner, you know, and already I'm starting to steam. But you know, you walk and look at all this bullshit, these con jobs and you know, and it's like Gene's elbowing me, shh, you know, and we're walking through. Remember the scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where Judge Doom is walking around the walls, and he's going like this,
Yes.
Shave and haircut, and he's waiting. Roger's behind the wall, and he's waiting. Judge Doom is trying to draw Roger out, because he says, no tune can resist it, Judge Doom says, as he keeps it up, and Roger's, and he just can't take it anymore. Busts through the wall. 2 bits! Well, that was me when we walked into the Picasso room. And I lost it. I did. I lost it. I fucking went nuts. And I saw red. And then suddenly I saw red because there was 5 red-coated guards surrounding me. And all the while, Gene's elbowing, come on, yeah, pulling me out of the place. And she finally got me to shut up. As we went outside, and she said, be quiet, wait till you get outside. So I got outside, and bam! It just, anyway. Find out, is this low art, the Marx Brothers? Is comedy low art? Or is it high art? Depends on what kind of comedy. What? Was Mel Brooks low art or high art? You know what I'm saying?
Depends on the film, I guess. But you know, that's a very interesting thing, because you know, this whole, you know, the concept of abstraction and all of that, and you know, to all the people listening, obviously, you know, Greg and I have a love and affinity for, you know, comic books and toys and gadgets and things that would be considered lowbrow, but also an appreciation for, you know, the fine art and things like that. But sure, where was I going with my conversation? The abstraction and impressionism coming out of a rebellion from the academies, right?
Yep, that was that.
And obviously, I mean, we're not going to get into an accurate art history conversation.
Yeah. That's a whole other story, or for somebody else.
But you know that.
Keith, you froze up, and I guess I'll keep talking. But the distinction that Keith was building, I believe, in terms of the English and French academies that had these strict rules of that had to be adhered to in order to paint a picture or to be a member, and you really couldn't function as as an artist in the day in that period without belonging to one of the academies, and so you had to be accepted by it and live by their rules, and your pictures were allowed, certain ways to handle things. I think they pretty much had yay many ways that you could express love, yay many ways that you could express anger, and you had to conform to this. And it was the so-called impressionists that start to, break away from that. And so at that time, certainly the so-called impressionists would have been considered a low art form, and the academy is the high art form. And then following the so-called impressionists, the post-impressionists, the abstractionist thing starts in the 50s. And so there's been this battle over this kind of stuff ever since. And Keith has disappeared off the screen. So I think that I'm still alive, right, Jane?
Yeah, you're absolutely
still
still
alive.
Keep going. So we should keep going, and let's take a look at this from a different aspect. I guess everybody either can still see Keith or can't. I'm sorry about that, guys. Keith lives in a part of New Jersey that the internet connection leaves everything to be desired. Anyhow, okay, so where do you want to go from here, Greg?
Well, I don't know. I was going through my notes, going through my note. Hey, Keith back again?
Yeah, Keith is back again. Keith, I was pitch hitting for you.
Thank you, Gene. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I was explaining to everybody that your internet connection sucks.
That's
so I'll just hang out here. In case you need me again, I'll hang out. Go.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So where were we when we were so rudely?
We were talking about when I dropped out. I could still hear you, but obviously you couldn't hear me. I was talking about the academies, and the rebellion from the academies led to the impressionism and abstraction and things like that.
And I get it. I mean, if I was there at that time frame, I would have been one of those guys. Because I mean, the academies, they had every freaking thing pinned down of you can only show expressions a certain way. You had to conform to all these rules and regulations, and it just killed it. It just killed art. And yet to abandon craftsmanship, look, the way I always saw it is like, what the hell is the point of abandoning, what is it, the caves in Lascaux or in Spain 50,000, 60,000 years ago? Mm-hmm. In 60,000 years at least that humans have been drawing pictures, trying to get it right, and to abandon all those centuries of struggle. It's like in the 50s, I remember that they decreed that the ultimate painting was a black square. So it was like anti-art. And what it became was to draw the figure was anathema, the human figure. To do anything representational was anathema. They basically praised the elimination and throwing away the use of the laws of perspective as great and as an achievement as the discovery of the laws of perspective in the 1400s in Italy.
Yes.
Yeah. In each era, I don't know. It's just, anyway.
Yeah, that's very interesting that it comes out of you come out of a form of rebellion and feeling creatively oppressed, right? So you rebel from that, but then that movement in and of itself becomes the oppressor.
Oh, absolutely.
It just kind of works that way, and there's a weird level of arrogance that develops within people, and again, this is across both sides of the spectrum of the art that we're talking about.
Oh yeah. This is not just one side.
I have, we jokingly, talk about going into the museums and the hushed tones and the way, they talk about things and talk about, lowbrow art, but going into comic book conventions and meeting people, I have met some of the most arrogant a-holes ever.
Or you artists, you mean artists, creative people?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, not the
That, well,
fans,
that's everywhere. That's not just in art or comics.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's everywhere.
Fine artists, and like I say, politics, religion, the whole spectrum of you. It's humanity. It's human nature. You know, you have an ego. Does it run you, or do you run it?
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, who's in control here?
And
Oh, the devil made me do it, or somebody.
Yeah.
Flip Wilson, remember? Remember
I
Geraldine? Oh, the devil made me do it.
Yes.
You know, it's.
You know, and as I was saying, you know, it's something that I don't get. I was victim of it myself for a while, you know, of like, oh, this sucks and it stinks and blah, blah, blah.
What do you mean? You were victimized? You were victimized?
No,
or
not
you...
victimized. I was a victim of my own ego.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And of, well, this sucks or this stinks. And then
I think we do that when we're younger.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there's an arrogance of youth.
Realizing, oh, you know, there's room for both.
Well, totally.
You know?
And again, it's not binary. That's the whole thing. That's the big word these days, right? Two-sided. There's more than freaking two sides to everything. It's a vast, complex world. Humans have vast, complex minds. There's more than just this and that, you know? Good and bad. Right and wrong. Left and right. That oversimplification is insane. To me, what I think is a great work of art, somebody else thinks is a piece of crap, and that's their right. Keith has disappeared again, so I'm kind of like talking to myself, and this is my room where I kind of like have collectible stuff that I've loved over the years, and it's like this comic cover here is one of my favorites, the Green Hornet from the Golden Era, you know, the whole Nazi period. Yeah, we lost him again. Okay. And these chalk figures are indeed a form of art. And I used to go to all these different carnivals and amusement parks in Detroit, where I'm from, back in the 40s as a kid. And these were the carnival giveaways. If you do a ring toss or a target practice and won, you would get these carnival figures, and I would go there all the time, and I never got one. And so as time went by, I was at a flea market once, and I saw one of these things in a junk basket there, and I says, "Holy mackerel, this is incredible!" And I pulled it out and bought it. It was like $1. I mean, this is all just looked at as disposable junk back in the day. But when you know, they're really kind of cool. They have this quality about them that is quite, to me, is very appealing.
That is a very appealing Uncle Sam statue.
Yeah, it is. You know, rolling up your arm sleeves, getting ready for the fight, you know?
What'd you say, Keith?
That I feel I keep ruining the conversation by freezing up and dropping.
Oh, no, listen, I want you to know, even though no one can see me. Hi, everybody, this is Jean. You don't know me.
Here, stick your face in just so they see it.
I'm not sticking my face in. Okay, there's my face. I was watching you live, Keith, for the first time, so I figured, well, I saw you froze once. I figured, it's the wind chill factor out there. So
I think it must be.
Yeah, I think it might be. Adrian, somehow I just came from a chat clone where there were people and they were waiting. And Adrian's not wrong, because I did notice, Keith, just so you know, that on the different Facebook pages, people are having problems connecting with this. So there are people waiting. So next time, guys, if you can hear this, or when you hear this, we'll figure out how to get you all in on the live. Go ahead.
Yes. But yeah, Gary Lippincott chimes in with, he's never seen Greg so serious. and he thinks it's very amusing.
So serious. We're kind of like having fun here, I thought. But anyway, I have all kinds of stuff here that is slob art. Now, slob art is not my phrase. Gene Shepard was a genius what I don't know what to call him. He had a show on WOR television, radio here in the New York greater tri-state area, and he would talk all about his past experiences growing up in the Midwest, Indiana. Well, most people are going to know who he is through the film A Christmas Story, which is based on his book In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. And that's like, to me, really him he coined the phrase Slob Art, which of course is the ultimate piece of Slob Art.
Oh, plugged in.
Here, I'm plugged in here. Was of course the leg lamp that Ralphie's father wore, this miniature of it. Remember that line? I love that line. Gene Shepard's narration over is, the old man's eyes boggled, overcome by art.
Come by art.
I mean, hey Gary, was that funny enough? I mean, but it's like I never personally made a distinction growing up. I mean, my parents started taking Tim and me, my brother, to the Detroit Institute of Arts, which is one of the best museums in the country. It's freaking phenomenal. Their medieval collection, their Egyptian collection. My God, overwhelming. And so I grew up on so-called classical art. I mean, and comic art and film art. I never made, well, this is good, this is bad, this is better than that, that's worse than this. It was like whatever turned you on, whatever was there was fantastic. We lost Keith again, Gene.
Oh, did we really? Okay, we having a real problem tonight. So for all of you who don't know, right now we got seriously nasty wind in this part of New Jersey, and I guess the cable companies are having a problem. I'm just gonna kind of click him there so we can kind of undo his head. So anyhow, Greg, go ahead.
But we're here talking
Slob Art.
about Slob Art, the Gene Shepard, who, look him up. He was incredible. He had a show on NET, way back in the 60s. But I'm my stuff's collectible stuff all around here. I don't know what my stuff falls into the category of. Most of it would fall into the category of junk to most people. And hey, that's great. I mean, I accept that totally. And I like little goofy crap like this. This nun that you want. It's like Nunzilla, I think was her name. Somebody gave me this. She's not working right now, but she'll walk towards you and spray sparks out of her mouth. And you notice that ruler she's got in her hand, because I used to get that a lot when I was not that much, but sometimes I'd get that in school because I went to a parochial school in Detroit, and I would sit in class and draw pictures, and the nun would come down the aisle with that ruler, like this, and so a little side story. Can I tell a story about that?
Yeah.
So art class, when I grew up in grade school in the parochial school, St. John Birchman's on the east side of Detroit, run by the Servite priests and nuns. Art class consisted of mimeograph sheets of the saints, the Virgin Mary, or Jesus. And you'd get one. This particular day, I remember, we had a mimeograph sheet of the Virgin Mary. And so you had your crayons, and the nuns take out your crayons. Here's the sheet. They pass the sheets down. Or take out your blue crayon. And she'd give you a talk. Color in Our Lady's mantle blue. And she'd give you a talk about why blue. Well, blue represents purity. They had a whole color kind of like association thing. You know what I'm saying? I was listening to the nun. I mean, because I was probably 5, 6 years old. And I pulled up my cadmium red medium crayon. And I start coloring in the Virgin Mary's mantle red. The nuns parading around with the ruler like that, boom, 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 down the aisles. And she gets to me, and she freaked out. And she went nuts. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I can't remember the exact words. I just remember her going crazy and grabbing my hand, taking the crayon out, and whapping me with the ruler. And, it wasn't until much later, I guess, that, first of all, I wasn't following orders. So I was disobeying. That's number one. You can't do that. That's the chief sin, And number two, it was the color red. Red was for prostitutes, whores. The Mary Magdalene was a slut, and she was colored red. You know, not the Virgin Mary. You know? It's like, anyway, that's a little side story.
Well, that was your first instance of rebelling against the Academy.
There you go.
Back to Slob Art.
With no sense of rebelling, I just like the color red at that moment better. I don't know what the hell it meant, but you're right. The Slob Art, you know, my ray guns. I was in the Army and all that stuff, but I prefer these kinds of things. You know what I'm saying? Especially this. Here's a nice. Here's a Tom Corbett Space Cadet. You know, I love this stuff. The Buck Rogers one was always one of the coolest. They actually used these Buck Rogers guns in one of those 50s. I think it was Teenagers from Outer Space. They actually used these 30s toy pistols in the movie, you know, from the Aliens.
Oh, man, that's fantastic.
So, Greg, how much were those guns when you were a kid? How much did they cost?
Oh, I don't know. No, well, I mean, I don't know what it was. Pretty cheap. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell they are now. It's like they're like, right? Quite expensive.
Like $1,000 each.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, you know, look at.
So did that make it art?
Is it? That's what I'm asking. Here's Froggy the Gremlin.
Does the price make it art?
Froggy the Gremlin was on a radio. Does the price make it art?
Yeah.
I think if you put a high price tag on it,
yeah.
Now it's fine art. If you put a low price tag on it, it's shit.
Right.
I think, Keith, are you there?
Oh,
Keith
no.
just froze up again.
Did we really lose
We keep
him
losing
again?
Keith. This is kind of appropriate, I think, with this whole kind of like.
This is embarrassing,
wacky.
guys. I'm really sorry. But I really have no control over this. So
Well, here's one.
blame Optimum Online.
Here's one that we.
Oh, God,
Gene-
this is the new one.
A friend just got me this. It was like, it's. Now I did it. Where's the book? There's the book. Let me see the book, Gene. There we go. I did this book. Let me put this over here first. I did this book with my brother, toilet training in less than a day. Didn't do that photograph, but there were ink drawings inside intended to show the proper way that, you know, diapers should be put on and taken off, and what the mother should do. And so I've joked with my son posed as the little kid in here because they wanted it to be accurate and they wanted them realistic. These two pediatricians that did the book, they were very particular. And so years went by, and my son, he still lives with it. I like to tell the story that he posed. And so one year we got him a first printing of this book, a pristine copy Gene found on the internet. And we got that for him. And along with a little figure, plaster figure, for it was apparently a product, an constipation product of some kind, with a little kid sitting on a toilet, really, really working at it very hard. And so people have known me and known that story. And so a little while for Christmas, was it my birthday or Christmas? Something.
It was your birthday.
My birthday, this friend bought me this old guy sitting and trying to do what the little kid was doing in the little statue that we got my son. So now I have one as an old man. So I think that now is that high art or low art?
That's Slob Art.
That's really Slob Art, right? But Slob meaning the appeal to the Gene Shepard used that, not necessarily call them, they're slobs. It was just his way to be, his sarcasm. The common man, the everyday guy. So there's that distinction between the common man, you know, and the whatever man. I don't know what the hell's the uncommon man. I mean, rich man. If I were a rich man, yada yada, you know. And so, but most of the people that collect art that have a lot of money don't even know a goddamn thing about art. So that's why these guys survive. The ones that bullshit into their. That's the other phrase I wanted to come up with. I read this in a book on an art forger, about an art forger. The phrase in the art world, that art world of what we're talking about, the easily deceived, is we see with our ears. So you may be looking at an object and Your eyes and your brain is telling you it's a piece of crap, but the expert is in your ear whispering, telling you it's a masterpiece and you should buy it. And you're in and hip and all that stuff if you do buy it. You know, you're and that's what you listen to. So they
That's
take
what
it
you
home
see
and hang
with.
it up.
That's what you see with.
That's what you see with that voice in your ear. And there are people who go and put a book like abstract art book on their coffee table in their house, even though they don't even know who the artist is or why. But they've been told that that makes you and your home look more intelligent.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But,
if you have
but
something on this your show, if they come into my room here, clearly they would see that I am definitely not intelligent.
but there is the opposite side of that conversation as well. If I'll just push back a little bit, of where the people that say, well, if it doesn't look like anything, then it's garbage and it sucks. And there are those people.
What do you mean? If it doesn't look like anything, what do you mean?
Well, if it's not representational, if it's completely abstract, or if it's
no, I don't say that at all. First of all,
I'm not saying that you do.
I know that
there
are people that just say that, and I think we should make that that distinction too. Because I have a friend who passed away recently. He did magnificent dribble texture and collage paintings.
Give his name.
Yeah, Brian Wolfson was his name, and he was incredible, and I loved his stuff. It knocked me out. And I knew him personally. I knew about him and what kind of a man he was. And he was an incredible human being. And he had a vast appreciation for art of all kinds. He had no prejudicial distinction about anything. He could see the value of all kinds of art forms, And that's, again, the binary word, right? There's only two sides. It fits in politics. It doesn't fit in art. I'm not saying it fits in politics, but they use it, right? Well, everybody uses it. But.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to go by the wayside.
It does,
in my opinion, across the board. And but even this need of, well, if I like this other stuff must be crap, or even a failure to recognize that sometimes maybe the stuff you enjoy is crap.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
There's that side of the coin too.
Absolutely.
There's that side of the coin too.
It's like,
I love it, but it's actually not that good.
Well, this guy's taking a crap. It's crap. There's no two ways about it. This little guy, this little figure. Come on. It's you could classify that. I enjoy it. I think it's funny. It's just there's humor to this too. There's a comedic aspect to a lot of this stuff that I enjoy. It's that quality about it too. And Keith has disappeared again. But let me throw something. Talking about the comedic aspects of especially people in this business. We were friends, Gene and I, with Joe Simon about 14 years before his death. We knew him. And he was we loved him, and he was incredible. But here, this is one of my proudest little possessions. It's Joe gesturing to all of the characters he's created over here. Captain America being at center, and him. And he gave this to me. And Tim was still alive. And what he wrote here on the bottom is, for Greg and Tim, if I could paint like the Hildebrandts, I wouldn't have to do this crap. So that was like, to me, a humor, a self-deprecating humor that he had. And I think there's something about that that's appealing, Keith is attempting to come back into the real world here.
Okay, so Greg, you're talking you're talking about highbrow, and you're talking about low. Okay, and I really don't know. I think one of the things you should talk about.
There's something here.
Okay.
That came up on the screen.
What came up on the screen? Okay, thank you for using. Yeah, we don't care about that. Okay, now, did you talk about?
The whole screen went off. You turned everything off.
That's not possible. Okay. So, no, I didn't. Okay. We are really having a time tonight. Okay.
Technical.
Technical time. Okay.
2x
so,
to L calling CQ. 2x to L calling CQ.
Okay, so Greg, because I wasn't part of the beginning of this conversation you're having, but did you talk at all about student art? Did you talk about that at all, as opposed to professionals?
No.
Okay. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because every year we go to the Cubert School graduation, and every year we buy a finished piece of art done by a student, done by a senior, and I consider that to be.
Well, why don't you come here and talk about this?
No, that's okay. They can hear me. I consider that to be good art. I consider it to be professional art, even though they're a student.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's high art. Okay.
Yeah.
They've just finished their 3 years at the Cubert School, and they've got a long way to go to be great artists. But at that point, they're good. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, why don't you talk about how the world sees the student art versus the professional?
Yeah, well, so-called amateur art versus
Yeah.
the professional, so-called beginner art versus the professional. There's no distinction other than the fact that you start to get paid for what you do. The professional is somebody who gets paid for what they do, whether that's a commercial artist that's doing it for a publisher, say, or an advertising agency, or they're doing it as a private commission for somebody, or they're doing their own painting and somebody's buying it. That there's a distinction. The amateur or the beginner or the student may not necessarily be selling their work yet, and so that's what separates them from the so-called professional. That doesn't mean their work is any less.
No.
That
But
does
is
not.
that considered lowbrow, or is that
Oh, I
considered
don't think-
highbrow, or is it considered anything? Is it considered real art yet?
Well, of course, it's real art. Everything that is art is art. I mean,
But by people who collect art.
Keith is back.
I know.
People who collect. That's in their. Can't.
What do
speak
you
for
think,
them.
Keith?
I can't speak for the
Do you
people.
think that people collect student art and they look at it like it's real art yet?
I think it depends on who the student is and their level of craftsmanship.
Okay. But you actually would agree, though, I think, that you can have high level art if you've got a great student long before they graduate.
Yes, yeah, because you have artists that are so gifted, or even what would be considered outsider artists,
Yeah.
that are truly remarkable artists, and they've never set foot into a school.
Well, look at some of the graffiti.
Just because the school doesn't necessarily make someone a great artist, it might give them the time to refine a craft, but I don't think a school can make an artist.
I don't think so either. I mean, that's up to you and your determination and your obsession. Look at graffiti art. A lot of it is beautiful. It's magnificent. And I'm sure they're
Yes.
known in certain communities for sure, but maybe not across the whole board. But I look, there's no good or bad in art. I mean, there may be stuff that you like or don't like, but I mean, as far as a genre, there's nothing wrong with it. The beauty is everybody's expressing themselves. That's
Yes.
if you're talking about representational or realism art, you can discuss it from the level of craftsmanship, the knowledge of perspective, the knowledge and your execution of your anatomy, your knowledge of light and color. You can talk about that kind of stuff.
You have a barometer.
But look at how loose and bold and broad and simple Edward Hopper's, say, cityscapes and other stuff is. Magnificent. Some of the buildings are just a wall and then you look at somebody of the detail of an Andrew Wyeth. One is not better than the other. There's no better than. There's other than.
Let me ask you a question. But what if the art is actually trying to perform a specific function, such as comic books, right? We have sequential art, and you have the masters of the craft, the old guys, the Jack Kirby's, the Joe Cuberts, guys that can tell a story. And then in my heyday of collecting comics in the 90s, you had a string of guys come in that visually they were very exciting to look at, in terms of storytelling, they weren't very successful.
Okay.
You
Well,
know,
there you
know
go.
what I'm,
Some got it, some don't. The ability to tell a story like that is what? Is that's kind of an innate
Magic.
ability. You know, I mean, I think maybe Joe Cubert used to say he could teach you everything, right? Is it you were there? You went to I taught at this school, but you were a student.
yeah.
You could learn all that. Do you think? Is that true? Can you learn how to tell a story? Tremendous, as good as Joe Cubert.
No.
Can you learn that?
The mechanics of it, maybe, you know, maybe the mechanics of it. But I do think it might come a little bit more naturally for some, you know, where, you know, there might be the individual that really studies the craft, really tries to learn the craft, but at the end of the day, they might not have the fluidity or the natural feeling of it as, say, someone like a Cubert. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's always the thing. That's always you know, it's like I'm still trying to figure it out myself. You know, I love
Yeah.
storytelling. I've been working on a thing with my son, Greg Jr., for a while, right? A year, and it's sequential. And I've not done that much. I've only done 2 books professionally, sequentially, and a comic strip with my brother Tim.
Yeah.
And whether or not that was considered to be good storytelling or not, I don't know. Nobody's ever told me yes or no one way or the other. I've never asked them. But I enjoy the medium. I think I have a grasp on it. For me, what about telling a story graphically is it clear?
Yeah.
Is it readable? Is it understandable? That's kind of like the way I approach them, you know?
Yes.
That I approach an individual painting that way. Is it clear and understandable? Does it instantly grab you? You've got what? A fraction of a second to grab somebody's eyeballs and attention.
Yeah.
That's how I approach storytelling in a comic. Is it clear and understandable, and does it follow through? Then all the other stuff that starts to apply. You know, the mechanics are angle, close up, long shot, medium shot, high angle, low angle. You know, all that. You know, but it's always about, even in the efforts of all your camera angles and setups, it's about keeping it clear, just like a movie. You're making a film. You know, clarity. No, I don't know. It's just a thought. Maybe unclarity sometimes may be even more powerful because it forces you to think. I don't know.
Yes.
You know, like in film, like Fellini or Ingmar Bergman.
But that the unclarity is it's a bigger risk, in my opinion, that has the potential for a tremendous payoff. But if you take the risk and you don't deliver on the payoff, it becomes utter failure.
Yeah, I see. To me, that's the stuff I enjoy doing, that kind of work. It is not that commercial. It's like when I painted my dreams, like the one that got used by Gene sold to Black Sabbath Mob Rules. Licensed to Black Sabbath. That image of the hulks, broods, and the stretched skin and all that. That's enigmatic if you look at it. I think, right? You don't really know what the hell's going on, and that's coming from a subconscious, unconscious state. Then I've got one of Jesus being hauled through the dumps, the garbage dumps, which is again a subconscious image that you look at it. You know, you see it. I see it. Oh, I understand. Then you look, and you start to study. You're pulled into it, and it's not that clear. Now you're in your head, and you're making your own decisions. I like that. I like that as much as I like the obvious. This is what it is. There it is. That's exactly what it is. There's no more or less. They're both, to me, they're both incredible, you know, arenas to work in.
Yes, I'm with you. I agree with you, and you know, for me, there's the finding of the balance of that, you know, that the commercial appeal of something, right? A visual clarity is a commercial appeal,
right?
To the elements that are uh, expressions of creativity,
Right.
and energy, the things that might represent something below the surface, always finding the balance of, okay, what can, working with symbolism,
Mm-hmm.
and this means something that might not everybody, they might not get
And
it.
I get it. Yeah. Well, that I think the film art to me that I can remember from the day, and I'm sure there's a lot of it, and I haven't seen that many. Fellini was a master of that. Federico Fellini, that whole group of Ingmar Bergman, that symbol that they made pay off for themselves. His films like La Dolce Vita or 8.5, a fucking genius milestone film, was highly commercially successful. I don't know if that would happen now because they were hyper personal movies. He was basically almost making autobiographical films.
Yeah.
And yet he made it work. But he made it work because he was an artist, first of all, a graphic artist. So he knew what the hell was up on that screen, and he knew how to pull people and grab their attention, And so artistically, he worked it very well. But it was hyper personal and very symbolistic, and really not readily understood at first view, But music was like that. I think Procol Harum was that. I think Gary Brooker said that, that if the lyrics were readily understood, it was not exactly that successful. It's almost like Rene Magritte painting, where you take the painting and you take his title, Magritte's title, and each are two separate ideas, but together they form a whole completely new idea. And I think with Procol Harum, that was the concept of certain early music.
You were talking about it working.
Of what?
Go ahead.
No. You said about you. What did you say?
I was going to say that in modern film, you said you weren't sure if it would work in modern film, but I think of like David Lynch.
Oh yeah. No, I didn't say. I didn't say it wouldn't work in modern film. Did I say that? If I did, I didn't mean that.
No,
I'm
not that it wouldn't work in modern film, but you. Sorry, I think I might be misquoting you, or.
I just said I wasn't aware
about it being successful.
Yeah, I said okay, about being successful. Yeah, okay. I don't know. I'm stupid. I don't see that many movies, and I'm sure there's all kinds of fantastic, films.
But yeah, that type of filmmaking reminds me of David Lynch, of where, but David Lynch is also a guy who he puts it out there, and sometimes the payoff doesn't necessarily pay off.
Right. No, wait, there's a question here. Gene's pointing out a question. Does Greg what?
Say his name.
Okay. Bill O'Donnell. Does Greg have any other universal monster busts? You're talking about Frank here? I think he's talking about Frankenstein.
Yes.
That's a mask.
Answer the question is no.
No, I don't have any more of that kind of thing. These teeny little monster busts that were done, that these kinds of guys. I got lots of these kinds of guys.
Okay, good.
But Keith, shoot. We're all over the place, aren't we? Wait a minute. Here, this was really.
These conversations go.
This was really considered to be low art, right?
Well,
the pulp
we
stuff.
are low artists.
The pulps, zippy, spicy, pep. This was like now. You couldn't pitch this stuff at anybody back in the day as an art form. But look, they make books out of it. There's collectors who pay tons of money on heritage for this era and style of art, where it was all thrown away. Comics were the same, right? Comic art was crap. Animation art was crap. It was nothing. It was just thrown away. Who wants it? Now it's like, right? Vastly collectible.
Yep. It's just like anything. It's, the passage of time, and, the pop art makes its way back into the culture,
Yeah, people get too embedded in it.
It's usually like what you're affected with when you're young, the things you're attracted to when you're young, and then you grow up, and when you're able to collect, you seek out that stuff that made an impression on you.
Yeah. Well, when people ask me what do I like to do, I say what I like to do in art is what I did when I was 17 years old. I like to draw girls, monsters, rockets. But I like, plus paintings like Jesus hauled through the dumps that kind of make you think a little bit, you know.
That, that's one of the most powerful images, in my opinion, that you've done.
Yeah, there's a lot
And
there. That
it
the
is
fun
one
of
of the, you know, that's also one of those distinctions that you can make in the high art, low art kind of thing of, but just keeping it in those terms for the sake of this conversation. But if you're doing a Batman story, which we love Batman,
Yep.
we love the Joker, but you're illustrating a story written by someone else, and it's a fully collaborative effort with multiple people involved. A writer, an editor, an artist.
Yeah.
That all have to pull together to tell something that is not unique to any of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare that you could pull off a comic book that is completely unique,
Right,
to an artist. But the image, like the I call it the Jesus in the junkyard
mm-hmm.
painting. The image is very uniquely you.
Yeah, well, it comes from my experience,
Yeah.
You on the cross.
Yeah. Well, I posed for the Jesus figure, and I posed for the guy hauling the cross. So once you look at it and start to analyze and see what the hell's going on there, it starts to become something else, which I like. I like that. I like. I've got a whole bunch of ideas like that I sketched out over the years. That someday I'll get to them. But it's all fun.
Yeah.
It's about having a good time doing it, no matter what it is. Even the most obvious.
At the end of the day, that is what it's about, right? Just having fun, expressing yourself. Sometimes it's an expression of fun. Sometimes it's an expression of sadness or an expression of anger.
Sure. Or it's.
But that's the job of the artist, right?
The job of the artist to take and certainly the job of the artist, and certainly has been an illustration. If you in that field, you have to be able to pull off almost anything. It just can't. I mean, there are people who definitely specialize. I've never been one of them because it never interested me just to do one thing. Film, animation, illustration, you name it. There's so much to try to explore and get into that it's just I can't land on one thing alone. And I'm not saying that people who don't. And then you sometimes wonder about that. Well, maybe if I would have stayed with one thing alone, I got better at it.
Yeah. No. But yeah, there's the element of ingesting the world, mulling around in your head, and then interpreting it as you see fit. Right?
Yeah.
Whether that comes out as highbrow or lowbrow.
Right. Or right. Look at it. I mean, or something that's got nothing to do with anything like that. Like I'm working on a painting right now. It's a private commission from friends here on the lake where I live, where they just built this magnificent Queen Anne Victorian house. It reconstructed it from reconstructing its original form, which was rotted, so they had to rebuild it. My God, the thing is a masterpiece of design and construction. They want me to paint a portrait of the house, so that's what I'm doing right now. So it's 5 feet. It's huge. It's like a gigantic painting. Not that people paint bigger than that, but I'm saying for me it's gigantic, 5 feet across, and it's about it's about perspective, structure. That's the effort to constantly maintain as you work on the piece. The structure of the object, and in a way you kind of like become one with the builders. You have to really get into every eave and underside, and because it's not a loose painting. It's very tight. Every shingle will be rendered in. So you really gradually understand this whole building and start to really almost, not quite, because it took, how many years? 3 years. 3 years to build. And we know the people who did the house, the incredible craftsmen. But that's what I'm working on right now. So what is that? Is that kitsch? Is that highbrow? Is that lowbrow? Is that high taste or low taste?
we'll say, you know, it's definitely a work of technical achievement, right?
That's
You're
what it comes down to.
you're hitting all of those bases, but that, I guess that ends us with the question of, is it art?
What is art?
Is it art?
Well, what is it? I don't know. What the hell does the dictionary say? I never even look it up to find out. What's the
That's
Webster dictionary definition of art? Like who cares? I never really, but we're talking about it. To me, this is art. If somebody would look at these statues, these things, and say, "Man, that's pure junk." What are you kidding me? But there were people that would win these things at the shows, at the carnivals and stuff. Take them home and proudly put them on their shelves on display. Like these were something that was achieved, and it's a piece of art. Because these would be people who couldn't afford, the stuff that the wealthy can afford. And I think that there's a value to that,
Yes, absolutely.
Wait a minute. He just looked up the definition of art here. The expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form, such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power.
Oh, crack of shit.
Huh? Well, but I mean, why is it just typically a visual form? I mean, singing is an art, acting is an art.
Oh my God.
Right? That's kind of strange that they were.
Wait, they make the distinction in the dictionary that it's primarily of a visual form?
Yeah, that's what they say. Somebody should rewrite the dictionary, upgrade it a little bit. What's that movie? There's a movie about the dictionaries with Mel Gibson and who else?
Yeah, who's the other guy?
It's really
There's
interesting.
a movie about dictionaries?
About the developing of the dictionary, the different. Look it up. It's Gibson's in it, and
Really?
who the hell? Anyway, whatever. Yeah, it's a good film. And anyway, there. So what was it? What was it again? I mean, what the hell did they say it was? It's nice, but is it art? There's a distinction.
Is it art?
I remember I used to spend a lot of the time in the library. Tim and I both did, because that's the only place you could find reference. You go to the library. There was no internet in the There were no internets in the 1940s. So we have the library, and I remember going through the periodical divisions. We go through magazines looking for art stuff on special effects in Disney. Oh, okay.
The Professor and the Madman.
The Professor and the Madman. Oh, it just went up this.
When school is no place you have to
The
be.
Professor and the Madman.
Why not go
That's
to
the
school
movie.
where remote learning can be
Anyway,
remote?
Tim and I would go to the library, and we would go look through periodicals for the stuff that interested us. It had to be a lot about Disney animation or in animation in general and special effects, but you could hardly ever find any. We found this one magazine. It still is in my mind. I must have saw this when I was probably 10 years old. It comes up, and it's a print out of Pinocchio, probably, in my opinion, the greatest of his early animated films, or maybe one of the greatest animated films of all time. And picture of Pinocchio. It says, big black letters. I can still see them. It's nice, Mr. Disney, but is it art? And I remember Tim and I in the library scream out, "Yes, it is!" Freaking out in the library and really kind of like, I think, throw the damn magazine back into the bin, And again, I think that the idea, what you just said a little while ago, Keith, is that group efforts, that was an early distinction. I don't know if it's still there, that it can't be considered to be art unless it's done by an individual. Once it's done by more than one person, it ceases to be on that level of high art. Now it's a group effort, so therefore it's not as good as or better. It's the other is better than. I remember that distinction years ago. No, I remember growing up with that distinction. There was that. It was, you read it in art magazines. I can't remember who said that, but I'm sure.
But you're talking about actual representational art now, Greg. You're not talking about like music.
No. Right.
Make that distinction.
Yeah, I'm talking about representational art, painting and stuff, But it's like, anyway, whatever.
Whatever.
Right. Was there more? Was there questions
So
that we were
our
supposed to?
now-
What?
Let's say we are at 5:10. Did you want to wrap it for the day, or do you want to keep going? What do you want to do?
Is there any questions that are being asked that we should answer, or anything like that that you can see?
I think there are people commenting. I don't see a lot of new questions, particularly about this. Like you addressed the questions that were on there, that at least that I can see. So if anybody that's listening right now or watching right now has any other questions about slob art, high art, fine art, garbage art, or just Greg in general, please ask away.
Just another comment about another artist that jumps into mind. Reginald Marsh painted the dregs, prostitutes, the Bowery, also the Depression era. Beautiful, fine art, fantastic in the museums. So that would be sort of like a fine artist making fine art out of low life.
An
Sort of.
artist making fine art out of low life. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
You're
painting
talking
the
about
dregs.
poverty. Talking about
I like that.
Well, he was painting the crime scenes and people in bars and doing stuff. Yeah. But he was an incredible artist. I love this stuff. He was fantastic.
What's his name again?
Reginald Marsh.
sells for business.
Reginald Marsh.
Incredible
March?
work.
Or-
Marsh. He painted,
I will look him up.
like scenes in the Bowery and, of prostitutes and, stuff like that. You know what I mean? So did another one.
Yeah.
He was a gay artist, Paul Cadmus. Fantastic artist, but very caricatured. But look at this inner city stuff that he would do of all these different types of people. The guy was an amazing artist. Fine art, I mean, even though he's painting, that was always the distinction too, possibly too, right? It had to be high, I'm talking to James, for the wealthy, so you're appealing to the wealthy, right? They were the ones that bought this stuff. So that was always considered to be, visualizing that strata was acceptable.
You mean their world?
Their world and their belief systems. And once they started to do work, Reginald Marsh is doing his stuff, and Edward Hopper, that city that
Came back down to the real world?
Yeah, there's a whole, anyway, that's just a whole other, I guess the purveyors of the earlier art form would have called that stuff low art. Whatever. So what are we doing?
I think it's time to end.
James
Can you
says,
hear me at all, Greg?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I couldn't hear you. Were you talking before?
No, I was listening to you.
Ramble on.
So I guess that's probably a good place to wrap it up for the day.
Yeah,
And
I think so.
so thanks everybody for tuning in, and the people that were chatting along with us. We truly appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you all again next week. And if you like what we're doing, please like it and share it from our Facebook pages or from the YouTube page, wherever you're watching. Help us get the word out there. We're trying to grow this thing as we go along. And also, please stop by spiderwebart.com. There you can view all of Greg's arts and
Keith's also.
purchase the merchandise that has his beautiful work on it.
And also Keith's art.
And also Keith's art, as Greg says. Yes. Thank you very much. So I'm going to sign off here, Greg. You have a good night.
You too, man.
Good night, Gene. I'm going to go say
Anyone
hi to
else?
my chickens for you, okay?
Yes. Say good night for them for me. See you, man.
Yeah.
Adios. have to turn it off, Gene. You have to turn it off.
Watercolor? What watercolor? I'm not Oh, but it's a print. Yeah, all right. Hang on one second, would you please?